Okay, hey guys, so I'm Jesse LaGreca. This is my apartment. We're with Occupy the 99%, and this is Mike Check, and we're having a conversation. The idea is just to get all different voices in, so we're not the 99%, we're just, a couple voices in the 99%, and we're going to have a good conversation. So I'm introducing retired Captain Ray Lewis from the Philadelphia Police Force, as well as Will Carey, comedian and writer from Baltimore, Maryland. And we're just going to talk for a little bit. So we'll start with Captain Ray Lewis. If you tell us a little bit about yourself.
I retired from the Philadelphia Police Department 8 years ago with the rank of the captain. After I retired, my wife and I immediately, the day after retirement, moved up to a very isolated, secluded area, into a farm that we bought a year before in the Catskills.
Okay, excellent. And then for yourself?
I grew up in a small town on the Chesapeake Bay in Maryland, and lived in Baltimore for 6 years, and went to school for theater, and started doing, discovered that I loved comedy and performance while I was there, and moved to New York City a year and a half ago.
Alright, very cool. So, gentleman from Philly and a gentleman from Baltimore, and living in New York like I am right now, so we're kind of different places, but the same ideas. So I guess the first question I wanted to ask you guys, a lot of people know me and why I'm involved with Occupy Wall Street, but let's hear about you, Will. I mean, what do you think? What are your thoughts?
Well, I wanted to be, I'm involved with Occupy because I want to be part of what I'm seeing as this sort of gross unfairness that has been unchecked for a long time, and this is finally the first time that people are actually saying, this is not right. Listen, let's talk about why this isn't right. And fix it.
Okay, cool.
I'm going to be involved.
What are we going to do about it? And then for yourself, Captain Ray Lewis?
Several reasons. Primary is that all my life I have an empathy for anything that suffers, animal, a person, amphibian, I don't care what it is. If I can put an end to it, I would like to put an end to it. And so I saw so many people suffering down here for such a good cause. And that really inspired me, that these individuals care, again, about social justice. It happened in the 60s, back in my time, but we were unable to push it further after the Vietnam War ended. But I saw the dedication to social justice. That inspired me to come down. The other aspect of it was I saw corporate media trying to marginalize the demonstrators, the people who cared, by interviewing the people with pink hair, the nose rings, the tattoos, although it's very creative, and I find that perfectly acceptable and enjoyable, even, the differences. But I realized they were trying to keep mainstream America from joining the movement, and that's a very effective way to do it. So in other words, me coming down here in full uniform, I was challenging corporate media, I dare you to try to marginalize me. And the last thing, the real tip was, I saw a clip on independent media where Wall Street, hedge fund managers, whatever you want to call them, were out on the balcony of a stock exchange, and they were actually popping bottles of champagne and pouring it into crystal glasses and drinking it, looking down at the demonstrators and just smiling and laughing. And to me, that was the moral equivalent of let them eat cake.
Definitely. Definitely. What do you think about that, bro?
Well, that particular behavior is the first I've heard of that, and that's clearly there's a moral disconnect for those types of people, and that's just like a brilliant sort of metaphor for this sort of gross like disparity that we're seeing in American culture. Right
yeah,
now.
Definitely. I remember when we first took the Brooklyn Bridge with 700 people arrested, someone had a sign that said, "Someone told me there'd be cake." And I kind of made me think, like, yeah, let them eat cake. I get the feeling like tax cuts for the rich and the rest of them let them eat cake. Okay, well, that's a good starter, man. Obviously, having you here, you have a certain expertise that I think we, like to share. Your opinions on law enforcement and Occupy Wall Street. When I say law enforcement, I mean not just our interaction with those people who are employed as law enforcement, but also the people outside, the job, and how what Occupy Wall Street is doing affects their lives personally, as far as bringing up this sordid state of economics and civil affairs that we have right now in America.
Well, my primary interest, or not interest, but reaction to the Occupy Zuccotti Park was the way they dismantled It was outrageous. When you take anybody's I mean, there was valuable property.
Yeah.
I mean, you're talking about personal computer, medical supplies, a library, backpacks, and when you take that stuff, if you take something from, if I take something from you but I don't use force, it's theft. Okay, they used force, and when you use force, that raises, I mean, theft is bad enough, but when you raise that crime to the level, that's robbery. When you use force to take, that's robbery. And Mayor Bloomberg actually signed off on a plan that approved robbery of these people. And to me, that's just unconscionable.
Definitely. What do you think?
The entire way the raid on the Santee was conducted was just really disgusting for me personally. If law enforcement, as I've always been taught growing up, are good people who want to serve their community, and their primary interest would be public safety. And to not only late at night, but to block access to media, have a police helicopter to block any press helicopters, to like, we don't want anyone to see what we're doing. That just, there's a certain level of credibility that is lost, I think, for the NYPD when that happened. And again, there's something very symbolic about destroying books and people's personal property. It's just reeks of just foulness.
And you know, you're a writer like me, so the idea that like they threw away Fahrenheit 451, to me,
right.
Like,
People's lives invested in those words, and it's just treated as garbage. And people that worked so that they could have that, because it obviously meant something to them, and to collect all of that, and then just to destroy it as if it were mere garbage is just disgusting.
Yeah, I mean, what really made me mad over anything else, I mean, like, there's a bunch of stuff that the eviction in Zuccotti really angered me, but the idea that they threw our library really turned my stomach, you know? That in this day and age when they're cutting education funds and they're closing libraries, and we built our own library and they threw that in the garbage, like, come on. Yeah, so...
Right.
You know, as a writer, I take offense to that. As someone who enjoys literature, I'm like incensed over the library thing, among other things. And I think that kind of segues into my next question, well, because it's information. That's what brought all these people in this room together. It's what gives information, exchange these ideas. And now we're looking at Congress wants to basically end the internet as we know it. And they just got this idea like a couple weeks ago, and now they're fast-tracking it through. And I wanted to ask you guys about internet freedom, because I think all of us are concerned with this freedom to access information. So I'm going to start with you, because you're a writer. Tell me what you think, brother.
No, absolutely. Well, restriction of the internet, I think, is like the last bastion to kind of sort of limit or hamper free speech, because the internet, with YouTube and Vimeo and things and social networking, is the one way that's people like us who don't have a cable television show, don't have a network deal, can express our opinions. Like, we can get on webcam and say what we think, and people will watch it based on what we're talking about. So I don't feel that there should be a filter for the internet, because for that reason, it's like the one bastion where anyone with a connection or access to a modem, which is not as widespread as it should be, as it could be, but I think that's the one last way where people like us could reach a lot of people, and you see that in not just in Wall Street, but in like other places as well, like Egypt, things like that.
Absolutely. And then for your opinion, Captain News?
It's no surprise to me that there's an attempt to silence the internet, because this independent media is a major threat to the movement. They can't control it. That's why it's a major threat.
No, not to the movement, but to the banker system.
Yes, I'm sorry. Yeah, exactly.
It's a major threat to basically the rich bankers who want to just have everything their way.
Yes, because they control that through ABC, NBC, and CBS and whatnot.
Fox News.
Yeah. But what I see is it's purely pure strategy, just like Zuccotti Park raid was pure strategy. This was nothing happened spontaneously. And it's all about a tipping point. Zuccotti Park and curtailing the internet is all about, they wait until the situation gets so bad that they think, if we squash it now, does it hurt our chances more than help it? So they continue to let it go until they say, you know what, now it's going to hurt us more if it continues to go. Same with Zuccotti Park, same with the internet. They don't want to squash it too early because then that's going to come back on them,
Yeah.
right 'em. So they just let it go so long until they say, you know what, if we don't stop this now, it's really going to be a problem. And that's where they're at with the internet.
And you know what's funny? Because I keep saying to people, like, you can't kill an idea. You can't evict an idea. I think the idea is out there. I think when we talk about, like, we are the 99%, people get it. They get that, like, they don't have a say in this democracy the way it's set up like an auction right now.
Right.
And, you know, to me, we have all these different problems that we need to fix. So I guess, like, let me ask each of you guys, name one problem in society and, like, what you would do to fix it. Just throw it at me. Something you got, I mean, like, something that kind of, like, ties in Occupy Wall Street, because I think there's so many different voices. Part of the reason I want to do the show is to let just regular people like us get their voices in, you know?
Well, one thing I think, and we were talking about this a little bit earlier, one thing I think that could improve this system substantially is to try to remove as much as you possibly could corporate influence on politics. Because when you remove when you remove the people that are financially supporting you, supporting a campaign, things of that nature, your focus is more on what you think is the right thing and less on favoring who helped you along the way.
Yeah.
When you set up things like that, your gut instincts to want to do the right thing may get lost along the way. And I think if you remove any kind of influences like that, you can get back to what politics for me should be, which is public service. And what democracy is, I think, as defined, is doing the most good for the most amount of people.
Yeah, okay, that's good.
And that makes
Although this is not one of the most important things that I consider it extremely important from the law enforcement side, and that is to change the recruitment process to how does an officer initially even get accepted to the police academy. And here's the process I'd like to, part of that process that has to be changed.
Elaborate a little bit. What's wrong with the process now that you think needs to
Oh
be
yeah,
fixed?
I'm going to.
Oh, okay, go for it then.
There's a specific test, it's called a personality test, called the Minnesota Multiphasic Personality Inventory Test. It's the most widely common personality test given among all law enforcement agencies. Even businesses use it to determine whether we should invest in training this person. Is it the right type of personality for their job? The Minnesota Multiphasic Personality Inventory Test one of the things it measures is a person's sensitivity. Right now, or at least when I left, that was 8 years ago, they were using that test to eliminate. If you didn't have come up with the right answer in that test, you were eliminated if you came up too sensitive. All right? They don't want to hire the person that's too sensitive because it all comes down to dollars. They feel that once they invest 6 months of education in that person at the police academy, it's a lot of time, it's a lot of money, a lot of effort, and then that person is too sensitive to handle not only the blood guts and gore, but also the constantly depressing situations you run into as a police officer. So that person cannot handle the blood, guts, or gore, but they also cannot handle the constant depressive environment. Subsequently, they quit. The department lost a lot of money there.
Yeah.
But what they don't realize is by hiring the hard ass, you're losing tremendously amount more money because he's the guy that's going to physically abuse somebody. There you have a $15 million lawsuit right there.
Getting that empathy out of the equation. You're
hiring people that are hard ass. And plus, this job already makes you harder. My first year, I was harder than I was when I entered. No doubt about it.
My best friend is NYPD. He just celebrated his daughter's birth yesterday, so, you know, blessings to him.
Right. And
like, some of my best friends are NYPD, so I understand what you're talking about.
Yeah, and my grandfather on my dad's side was a Maryland police captain.
Oh, okay, so
retired.
We all have friends and family who are NYPD or police officers, and they're part of the 99% too.
I just like that real quick. Yes, he disrespects the public, he doesn't talk to them properly, he doesn't treat them properly, and more important than the money you lose the community respect and the community willingness to work with you. And that's even more important of a loss than the monetary value.
You know, and that's a great place to leave off, just the community respect, building a community of ideas. That's a great point. Guys, I want to thank